Welcome to my channel. You can subscribe for more content like this. The candle game. There are some games that people play that are just downright stupid. This is one of them. This game has been passed around in whispered voices from person to person since who knows when. And now we have decided to share it with you because, well, here at our channel, we love stupid games. So let's jump right into it. You will need 7 candles and a lighter or matches. Take the 7 candles and arrange them however you would like. Traditionally, they would be placed in a circle. Then you want to face the candles and take a deep breath. Close your eyes. Da-da-da-da. And then say your deepest desire or crush's name 7 times. After you say their name the 7th time, you are supposed to turn around, light the candles, and then turn back around. If everything goes according to plan, the reflection in the mirror should mimic you and light the candles with you. But if this game has taught us anything, it's that things rarely go according to plan, and you should always be prepared for failure. As you're probably already aware, mirrors can do some pretty freaky things sometimes. And this game is all about embracing those freaky things and hoping for the best. When the candles start to burn, you must not move or speak. If you move or speak, the ritual will be broken and the game will end. Just stand there and let your reflection do its thing. If it mimics you and lights the candles without an issue, then congratulations. Your wish is going to come true. Or maybe it already has. Who knows? Sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways. But if the candles don't light, then prepare for the worst. The game will continue until the candles go out on their own, or you are forced to break the 4th wall. In order to win, you must stay perfectly still while your crush's name echoes through the bathroom. I know that might seem impossible, but it's not. Try not to breathe. Try not to move. If you make the slightest movement or let out a single breath, the game could end. I know it's hard, but if you really want your wish to come true, then you have to try. If the candles go out before you are done, whatever your deepest desire may be, it will not happen. And it may even go the opposite of what you wanted. But if you manage to stay perfectly still and silent throughout the entire game, no matter how long it takes, your wish will eventually come true. It may not happen right away, but eventually you will get what you want. Just remember, you must not move or speak, not a single breath or twitch. Stay still like a statue and keep your eyes closed. Don't peek. No matter what happens, no matter how long it takes, just keep repeating your crush's name over and over and over again. As the candles burn down and the wax melts away, your desire will grow stronger. And as the 7th candle flickers out, your wish will finally come true. So are you ready to try the candle game? Let us know in the comments below. And if you have tried it, let us know how it went. We would love to hear your stories. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos like this. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. This happened to me about a year ago. I was just getting home from work, and my girlfriend had gone out with some friends. She'd be home soon, so I thought I'd spruce up the place a little bit, maybe make myself look good for when she got home. And while I was doing that, I started tapping a fun little rhythm on the wall, kind of like you're playing the drums a little bit. But the thing is, our apartment walls are paper thin, and there's a family in the apartment next door with a kid. So after about 30 seconds of this, I heard a knock on the wall. I stopped immediately and thought, wow, that was weird. Then I heard a knock again, exactly the same sound. I, of course, freaked out and was like, what the hell was that? Then I heard it again. It sounded like someone knocking on the wall 3 times exactly how I had been doing it, but much louder. And then I heard a thump and I thought, oh God, what if somebody broke into my apartment? Because at this point, it's almost midnight and my girlfriend still isn't home yet. I don't have any weapons or anything like that, so I was freaking out a little bit. So I went into the kitchen and grabbed a big chef's knife, because I figured if somebody was breaking in and trying to attack me, I might be able to defend myself. Then I started listening very intently to the wall, and all of a sudden I heard a voice from inside the wall say, boo, and I was completely freaked out. I dropped the knife, which hit the floor and made a bunch of noise, and then the lights in my apartment started flickering. So I was standing there in the dark with my phone, trying to find the light switch. And I couldn't find it because I didn't live there alone. My girlfriend was home. And when she walked in and saw me holding a knife and all the lights were out, she screamed and then started crying because she thought I was going to hurt myself. Then I explained to her what was going on and she said, Let's go check the closet. So we opened up the closet door, and behind the clothes I had a full-length mirror. And in the mirror it looked like someone was standing in the closet next to me. I turned around, and there was nobody there. And then my girlfriend and I started to investigate further. We took everything out of the closet, and even took the door off its hinges to check behind it and underneath it. And in the walls and everything, there was nothing there. We even called the police to see if anybody had reported any break-ins in the area, or if anybody had been climbing around in people's apartments, and they said no. So eventually we closed the door, locked it, and went to bed. But the next day I noticed some strange things. One, the closet door wouldn't stay shut. It would always open on its own. And two, there were huge scratches on the wall where I had been knocking. It looked like whatever was on the other side of the wall had been clawing at it. Now, my girlfriend and I are pretty rational people. So instead of assuming that it was a ghost or some kind of demon or something, we decided to play it safe, and we moved out. We found somewhere else to live. We didn't tell our landlord about the situation because we didn't want them to think that we were crazy. Now, I don't know if this is related, but about 2 weeks ago, I was home visiting my parents, and I was walking past the apartment building where my ex-girlfriend and I used to live. And I was thinking about how weird that situation was. And as I was thinking about it, I started lightly tapping on the wall exactly how I had done before. And I heard a knockback. It was exactly the same sound that I had been making. And I immediately stopped, and I was like, that's freaky. And I knocked again, just lightly. And I heard a knockback again. I didn't do it a third time because I was kind of scared. And then I continued on my way. So now I'm wondering, was it just a really weird coincidence that someone else was doing the exact same thing? Was it the ghost, or was it something else? Welcome to my channel. Today I will be reading from the R No Sleep subreddit, so let's jump into it. The elevator trick. I was working the night shift at a hotel front desk this past weekend. We had a pretty slow night, so my coworkers and I were just chatting while we worked. Around 3 a.m., one of my coworkers had to use the elevator to take some stuff up to a guest room. The elevator in our building is notoriously glitchy, frequently gets stuck, and the buttons are all misaligned and kind of just feel like you reaching into an open grave every time you use it. She got out, turned to go down a floor, and back to the lobby when the lights went out and the emergency lighting kicked on. My coworker pressed the button for the lobby, and the door opened. She stepped through and screamed bloody murder. The thing that made her scream was not something that should have been there. So my other coworker and I ran to the elevator to see what happened. The door was still open, and the power was still out. Stepped inside to find my coworker huddled in the corner shaking. I asked her what happened, and she mouthed something that looked like holy shit while pointing at the floor. The floor was gone. It was just a black void with something moving in it. That wasn't supposed to be there. I don't want to be too descriptive about what we saw, because I don't want this story to get locked or age restricted. But it was definitely not human, and it was definitely not of this world. It was moving around in the floor space where the numbers should have been, and it seemed to be getting bigger. I immediately started to panic, but I forced myself to stay calm and think of a solution. If we screamed for help, who was going to come? It was 3 a.m. and most of the guests were asleep. And even if someone did come, they wouldn't believe us. They would think we were joking or messing around. I tried to reason with my coworker to get her to calm down and think of a solution together. But every time I reached out to touch her, she flinched away from me and screamed. So I knew that whatever she saw really scared her. Then I had an idea. The emergency lighting was still on, meaning the elevator wasn't going to move or start going up or down anytime soon. We could probably escape. I told her my plan, and she reluctantly agreed. I opened the door and we slowly backed out, keeping our eyes forward so we wouldn't have to look at what was in the elevator. Once we were out, I closed the door, turned off the emergency lighting, and leaned against the wall. As soon as the emergency light turned off, the movement in the elevator stopped. Whatever was in there was gone. My heart was racing and I was shaking. I took a couple deep breaths to try to calm myself down before going to the front desk to write up the incident report. While I was writing it, my coworker was trying to call maintenance to get them to come check the elevator. After about 10 minutes of no answer, we decided to go check the breaker box to reset the elevator. We flipped the switch and waited for the elevator to start working again. But instead of the up and down arrows SOS, sign and floor numbers, there was just a big red X. And then right under that, newly formed in the floor, was the up and down arrow. I cautiously got in and wrote it to the top floor. On the way up, the up and down arrow kept flashing, which meant that the elevator was working. But something was wrong. Very wrong. We got off and walked out as fast as we could, keeping our eyes forward. The whole ride up, I was bracing for something to be waiting for us on that floor, but nothing was. I guess whatever was in the elevator shaft didn't like bright light. Or maybe it was unreal and only existed in the darkness. Who knows? From that point on, nobody would ride the elevator after dark, at least not while I was working. And my coworker quit the next day. I don't know if she quit because of the elevator or if she was just tired of working nights. But sometimes when I'm alone in the lobby at night and I hear the elevator ding, I couldn't help but wonder if whatever was in the shaft is still there waiting for its next victim. That was the No Sleep edition. And if you like this type of content, check out my podcast where I publish similar episodes. Also hit that subscribe button because I put out new videos every single day. Thank you for watching, and have a good one. This story comes from a Reddit user. So I was 17 years old and living at home with my parents. One day in school, I was bored out of my mind in class. So I pulled out my notebook and started doodling. Then I thought to myself, I wonder if I can make a cool design using only numbers. So I got on my phone and searched for random numbers and found this cool sequence that looked like this. It was the Fibonacci sequence, which I had studied in math class. For those who don't know, the Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones, usually starting with 0 and 1. So it goes 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, etc. Anyway, I started copying the sequence into my notebook, but then I ran out of room, so I continued it on the next page. And then I thought it would be cool to add the next number to the previous page, making a sort of spiral shape. So I did that and ended up with something that looked like this. I thought it was pretty cool even though it was just numbers. Later that day I went home from school and my mom asked me how my day was. I told her it was fine. Then she went to go make dinner and I went to go sit in my room. I was thinking about the numbers I had written in my notebook earlier and I decided to copy them again, but this time write them on my bedroom wall. So I got some paper and a pencil and went to work. By the time I had finished, it looked just like this. Then I heard my mom yell from downstairs, "Who wrote all those numbers on the wall?" I yelled back, "I did." Then she came up the stairs and asked me why I had written them there. I told her it was just something I had been thinking about doing all day, and that it was unto big deal. She didn't say anything else and walked away. A few hours later, after I had gone to bed, my mom came into my room to check if I was asleep. As she was walking down the hallway outside my room, she could have sworn she saw the exact same numbers being written on the wall. But she just shook it off as her being tired and went back to bed herself. The next morning I woke up and went to use the bathroom, which was right down the hallway from my room. As I was walking to the bathroom, I noticed the numbers had appeared on the wall again, but now they were written in blood. Of course, I freaked out and ran back to my room to hide under the covers, until my mom came in to check on me. I could hear her talking to my dad in the hallway outside our rooms. I listened intently as they were clearly talking about me. I heard my dad say, "Maybe we should call the police." Then I heard my mom respond, "No, don't be ridiculous. It was probably just a one-time thing. Let's just leave him be." Then they both left my room. I stayed in my room all day until my dad came in to tell me that my mom had gone to call the police. At this point, I couldn't take it anymore. I jumped out of bed and started yelling at my dad, saying that I had only written numbers on the wall and that it was no big deal. But he just stared at me for a second, then called the police himself. When the cops arrived, I told them exactly what had happened. They searched my room, but didn't find anything. I guess they assumed it was just some kind of weird phase a kid was going through, because they didn't end up taking me in. Dead, they just gave me a warning and told me to be more considerate in the future. For my mom, I never wrote those numbers on the walls again. And my mom never told the police that she had seen me writing the numbers on the walls in blood. I honestly believe that she knew I was incapable of such a thing and didn't want to get me in trouble. To this day, I still wonder if those numbers had any kind of supernatural significance, or if it was just a weird coincidence. Welcome to my channel. Today we will be reading from the r/NoSleep subreddit. So let's jump into it. The Doll Circle. When my daughter was 3 years old, she became obsessed with a TV show that had a bunch of singing dolls on it. We didn't allow her to have any dolls that looked like the ones on the show, because they were creepy as hell. but she still wanted them. She begged for months until finally we gave in and bought her a few. Well, one night she arranged all of her dolls in a circle on the floor facing inward. Each doll had its arms raised as if reaching for something in the center of the circle. My wife and I found this extremely creepy, but we didn't want to ruin the magic of make-believe for our little girl. So we just asked her to do something else with her dolls and left it at that. The next morning when we went to check on her, she was in her bed crying, and all of the dolls were arranged in a circle around the bed, each doll with its arms raised as if reaching for her. My wife and I immediately took the dolls out of the room, reasoning that if she had managed to get out of bed and arrange them in a circle in the middle of the night, then something was wrong. We told her that the dolls needed to go in the living room for now, and she stopped crying and went back to sleep. That was fine. But every night after that, she would wake up crying for her dolls, and we would have to go in and comfort her. It was so annoying. What the worst part was that sometimes when we went into her room, we would find the dolls arranged in circles around her bed, and other times, we would find them sitting on top of her chest staring at us with their soulless eyes. One night we got so pissed that we took all of the dolls and stuffed them into a garbage bag and threw them away. In the morning, she cried for her dolls. But we told her that they were all broken and that she had to be a big girl and stop playing with them. We figured that this would put an end to the whole nightmarish doll situation. But the next night, we heard her talking to herself while she was getting ready for bed. My wife and I couldn't hear what she was saying because it was too quiet. But we could hear her tone, and it sounded like she was having a full-blown conversation with someone or something. We ignored it, assuming that she was just being a kid with an overactive imagination. After she went to bed, we started watching TV in the living room. About 10 minutes later, we heard her voice again, only now it sounded much louder. She was definitely yelling at whoever or whatever she thought was in her room with her. She started screaming for us, but not in a normal way. It was like she was trying to communicate some kind of message through a series of screams and yells. We ran into her room and turned on the light and found her sitting in the middle of her bed with all of the dolls surrounding her. They were sitting in a circle with their arms raised just like before. But the creepiest part was that they were all staring at us with their soulless eyes. My wife and I noped out of there and went straight to the neighbors. My wife called the police while I tried to calm my daughter down. The officers came and searched the house, but found nothing. They even brought in a canine and checked the entire yard, but they found nothing. The next day, after the police had left and my wife had stopped crying, we decided to move out of that house. We took all of our stuff with us except for one thing. I couldn't bring myself to part ways with those dolls, even though they were obviously the cause of all of our problems. I mean, they were just dolls, right? How much damage could they really do? It's why I took them to my new house and threw them in the attic. Well, that was a huge mistake because last night, I was awoken in the middle of the night by what sounded like screams. I ignored it at first, thinking that it was my wife or maybe the neighbor's kid. But then the sound started coming again. It was definitely coming from the attic. I went down there to investigate and found that all of the dolls were gone. I checked the house and they were nowhere to be found. Then I remembered that the screen door had come off its hinges a few days ago. So I went out to check, and sure enough, there they were, sitting in a circle on the grass, staring at me with their soulless eyes. And that is story number 499 of our channel. If you liked this one, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. If you want to hear more, I read these every single day, so there's always fresh content. Also, be sure to let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments. Do you think OP should have gotten rid of the dolls sooner? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to hear more, click one of the links on screen now. Till next time, don't forget, I love you. Welcome to my channel. Today we will be reading from the r/nosleep subreddit. So let's jump into it. This happened when I was about 12 years old. It was summer, so my two best friends, Ben and Joe, came over for a sleepover. We were watching movies, eating junk food, and having the time of our lives. Around midnight, we started telling each other scary stories in the dark. The power went out right as I was telling one of my scariest ones, leaving us in total darkness. Of course, we were freaking out sitting there. But then an idea struck me. We had this big bag of chalk that my little sister used to draw with. I suggested we draw different shapes on the floor, and whoever stayed in the middle of the shape, when the lights came back on, would be eliminated. Then the person who was eliminated would get to tell their scary story. This seemed like a great idea at the time. After what felt like hours, the power came back on, and we all stood in the middle of the shapes. We did this multiple times with circles, triangles, and hearts, until one of us wrote down the devil's trap symbol, a pentagram. We didn't think anything of it at the time. And as I mentioned before, we were just having the time of our lives. We continued playing until around 3 a.m. when we heard some strange noises outside. Obviously, we were freaked out sitting there in the dark listening to these noises, but then we remembered the pentagram. We all ran over to it and started yelling and making tons of noise, so whatever was outside would go away. Then once we were sure whatever it was had gone away, we all went back to our places to try and sleep. We were all piled up on my floor with flashlights under our pillows just in case. In the morning, my mom came in to check on us because she knew we had a sleepover and she was expecting us to be sleeping in. She turned on the light and said, "Good morning, you guys," and we all responded with a good morning. My mom left and we all got up and started talking about how embarrassing it was that we were sleeping on the floor. As we were getting up, we noticed that the pentagram that we drew was glowing. Not only that, but the chalk that we used to draw the pentagram was also glowing. We were too afraid to touch it, so we just stared at it in the middle of my living room floor. As the seconds passed, the glow started to get brighter and brighter. I do want to know if it was because of the chalk or because of the fact that it was morning, but the pentagram started to fade away. As it faded away, one of us noticed that Ben was missing. We started to panic, not knowing where he could have gone. We looked everywhere in my house, but he was nowhere to be found. Then Joe noticed that the front door was slightly open. He walked over to it and opened it up to see Ben standing outside in the rain. Joe goes out and starts yelling at Ben, asking him why he ran away and what he was doing outside. But Ben didn't respond. Instead, he started to walk away from the house. Joe tried to grab Ben's shoulder to stop him from leaving. But as soon as he touched him, he screamed and swatted Joe's hand away. He then started to walk faster and faster until he was practically running. Joe started to run after him. And as he got closer to Ben, he noticed that Ben wasn't wearing any shoes and that he was barefoot. Not only that, but he wasn't even holding his jacket that he had on earlier. It was also at this moment that Joe noticed something very strange about Ben. It was as if Ben wasn't there. You know when you're looking at someone and you can't quite focus on their face? Well, that's how Joe was feeling right now. It was as if something was off about him, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Then Ben stopped running and turned around to face Joe. He looked at him and whispered, "You should leave now, while you still can." His voice sounded raspy and inhuman. Then he turned back around and started walking away. Joe turned back around and started walking back towards the house. But he couldn't take his eyes off of Ben. As he watched, Ben slowly started to fade away into the trees. It was as if he was never even there at all. I'm currently writing this while I watch the new Netflix series based off of this subreddit. If you want to hear more No Sleep stories, stay tuned. Also, please subscribe to my new podcast where I publish similar content. Thanks for listening and have a good night. This happened to a guy while he was backpacking in the Beartooth Wilderness in the early 2000s. He was sitting around his campfire one night, and he decided to look up an old forum that he used to frequent called Spirit Songs. It was a forum about songs that were allegedly used by Native Americans to summon spirits. And one of the songs, or rather whistles, had always stuck with him. So he looked it up, and there it was, a whistle that sounded like this. He wasn't sure if it was the isolation of the forest, the darkness, the fact that he was sitting alone by a crackling fire, but for some reason he felt compelled to try it. So he started to whistle the tune. Immediately the wind picked up, and the trees went silent. Then he heard a twig snap. He turned to see what it was, but it was too dark and the fire was behind him, so he couldn't see anything. Just shrugged and figured it was probably a deer. So he continued to whistle the song into the darkness. Then he heard it again, a twig snapping closer this time. At this point he started to get freaked out. He tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination, that there was a logical explanation for what he was hearing. But his imagination didn't help much when his blood ran cold at the sound of footsteps. Footsteps in the dry leaves crunching closer and closer. He stopped whistling and listened. The footsteps stopped. Maybe it was a bear. Maybe it was a mountain lion. Maybe whatever it was, it had stopped when it realized that it was being watched. He thought about grabbing his bear spray. But where was his headlamp? It was probably in his backpack. Considered yelling, making a bunch of noise, and hopefully scaring whatever was out there away. But what if it was a bear? What if it was a hungry bear that didn't like the sound of his voice? So he sat there frozen in fear until he heard the sound of footsteps again. Closer than before, definitely closer. This time they were followed by the sound of heavy breathing. Whatever it was getting closer, faster. Now he was definitely scared, really scared. And then he remembered the whistle. He started to whistle the tune again, louder, this time hoping that it would scare whatever was out there away. Instead, the breathing stopped, and then he heard the sound of something large falling to the ground. Whatever it was, it landed heavily, too heavily. If it was a bear, it had probably hurt itself. He continued to whistle until he heard heavy footsteps again. But this time, the footsteps were coming towards him. Big steps, loud steps, getting closer and closer. Then he heard the sound of something large dragging itself across the ground. Whatever it was coming closer, way too close. He could see the darkness in front of him, illuminated by his firelight. And in that darkness, he saw something dragging itself closer. It was dark and it was big. He couldn't make out any details, but it was definitely big. It was moving closer, faster. And then he saw a pair of glowing red eyes in the darkness, eyes that glinted in the firelight like a predator's eyes. He screamed, a loud, piercing scream that echoed through the trees. In response, the thing in the darkness let out a low growl. Then he saw the eyes again, but this time they were closer. The growling stopped. The eyes stared at him for a long moment. Then they turned and disappeared into the darkness. He never saw or heard anything else that night. But sometimes in the middle of the night, he would wake up to the sound of heavy breathing in his tent, and he would think, maybe it was not a good idea to disturb the spirits in the woods with his tin whistle. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out more content. There's something for everyone here. Thanks for watching.